ॐ श्रुति स्मृति पुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शंकरं लोकशंकरं शंकरं शंकराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेद विभागिने व्योमवत् व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्र रुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः। देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। Okay, who would like to chant? Yeah, Swapna. Okay, from verse number 5. Shri Bhagavanuvāca
Shri Bhagavanuvāca
Bahūni me vyatītāni
Bahūni me vyatitani
janmāni tava chārjuna
Janmani tava charjuna
tānyaham veda sarvāni
Tanyaham veda sarvani
natvam vetha parantapa
Natvam vetha parantapa
ajopi sannavyayatma
Ajopi sannavyayatma
bhūtānāmīśvaropi sanna
Bhutanamishvaropi sanna
prakritim swamadhishthāya
Prakritim swamadhisthaya
sambhavamyatma mayaya
Sambhavamyatma mayaya
yada yada hi dharmasya
Yada yada hi dharmasya
ग्लानिर्भवति भारत
Glanirbhavati bharata
अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य
Abhyutthanama
तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्
Tadatmanam srijamyaham
परित्राणाय साधूनां
परित्राणाय साधूनां
विनाशाय च दुष्कृताम्
विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां
धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय
धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय
संभवामि युगे युगे
संभवामि युगे युगे
जन्म कर्म च मे दिव्यम्
जन्म कर्म च मे दिव्यम्
एवं यो वेत्ति तत्त्वतः
एवं यो वेत्ति तत्त्वतः
त्यक्त्वा देहं पुनर्जन्म
त्यक्त्वा देहं पुनर्जन्म
नैति मामेति सोऽर्जुन
नैति मामेति सोऽर्जुन
वीतरागभयक्रोधाः
वीतरागभयक्रोधाः
मन्मया मामुपाश्रिताः
मन्मया मामुपाश्रिताः
बहवो ज्ञानतपसाः
बहवो ज्ञानतपसाः
sorry that's wrong बहवो ज्ञानतपसा
बहवो ज्ञानतपसा
पूता मद्भावमागताः
पूता मद्भावमागताः
yeah did you recognize why that was wrong Swapna okay tapasa is the third case tritiya vibhakti tapas tapasa whereas everything else is in masculine plural okay all right yeah so we are now in the 10th shloka of the 4th chapter so far Bhagavan Shri Krishna talked about the teaching tradition Guru Parampara and the importance of the teaching tradition. Maybe he didn't say it's important. We are saying it's important, but he just talked about the teaching tradition. And he's implied that, and he also said that whatever I taught, Vivaswan, same thing I'm teaching to you, nothing new. So it's already been patented before, and I have nothing to do. After so many years, I can't bring a new version, not possible, that he has said. And he's implied that. And then he talked about the avatar, that I am an avatar. Like that, he introduced the idea of avatar. And the purpose of avatar was also said 7 and 8. So whenever adharma seems to keep on increasing and the people who are given to dharma are unable to protect themselves, then he says, I will come as an avatar. Like that he said. And then from 9 onwards, he gets back to the thread of the 2nd and the 3rd chapters. And he says, one who knows me in reality, one who knows my real nature, tattvataha, yaha veti, yaha tattvataha veti, verse number 9, saha mam eti, that person gains me. Like that it was said. And of course that person does not have another birth, punarjanma na eti, he was said, punarjanma, another birth, the question of another birth does not arise. So here our acharyas make it a point to say this. We don't study shastra so that, sometimes people say, I don't want to have another birth. Like that they say, it's very common in our culture, because this next birth is always there. And fear of another birth starts coming, as we age for 30, the guy who is 30 years old never talks about next birth. There's no reason to talk about, because life is great, what is this next birth you're talking about? Allow me to enjoy my life now, okay? Then 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then suddenly the whole language changes, whole attitude changes, entire thing changes. And finally they say, when are you going to take me? This becomes the question. And understandable. This is how it is, and we're not. That's how it is. So here, our acharyas, they say, we are not studying Vedanta to not have a next birth. That's not why we are studying Vedanta. Because not having next birth is based on fear. And fear, we are talking about that fear itself, whether that is legitimate or not. That's the question we are asking. If whether next birth is going to be there or not, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Krishna says, so therefore we believe him. Okay. But really speaking, we can't verify all these things. Can't be verified. Therefore, we don't latch on to something that is just a belief. That is a belief, a very valid belief, all right. But something that can't be verified, we can't base our life based on something that is not verifiable. Therefore, we have to go back to that knowledge. The Mam Eti, he says, and different people will interpret it differently. So the Vaishnavas will say, yes, look, Krishna, when you get moksha, you will join Krishna in Vaikuntha. And so, Mr. Krishna, if you take the speaker of this shloka as Mr. Krishna, then of course, then you're going to be in the company of Krishna. That's very nice. And but if we have to think a little more, hey, the same Krishna says later on, you'll join me, but then Kshine Punya Martyalokam Vishanti. When that Punya is exhausted, which Punya? The Punya that made you join me in heaven, And that Punya, when it gets exhausted, you're going to come back to Martyalokam. Martyalokam means not necessarily earth. Any loka where death is going to be a problem for everybody. And so this death is going to haunt you after a long, nice time with Krishna. We got a good neighbor, you have a nice time, suddenly the neighbor leaves, then life is a little different. So he's going to say that, how are you going to address all these things? So those unanswered questions will be there if you don't interpret this properly. So that's where Vedanta comes. And there we said that Mam Eti. So, yo mam veti tattvataha, one who knows me in reality, the truth of myself. When Krishna says, we said earlier, truth of Krishna and the truth of the jiva are identical, and that identity has to be understood. One who understands that identity has gained me, means what? Knows that there is no difference. There has never been a difference between the jiva and Krishna. Never been a difference. I have created a difference artificially. And that difference is what has caused this samsara. Like that, we concluded in the last class. So here, the question is, how this jiva is going to know Ishwara? How is it possible? Mam yo veti, Krishna says, one who knows me. How can a person with such limited knowledge know this Ishwara, this God who is called Sarvajna in our Sanskrit language, and who is called omniscient in English? Okay, how it's possible? Not possible. The word omniscient itself, how to spell, I don't know. Okay, we have a lot of, if we have 10 people, if we ask them to write down the spelling of the word omniscient, then many of them are going to scratch their head. But somehow the spelling we can manage, because we Indians have this uncanny thing about spelling, and they are able to spell, if they are taught, they learn the language, they are somehow able to spell also. They have this good memory. That's why in America, they have this spelling bee. And the spelling bee competition, I don't know if it is there in India, it may be there now. I've not heard. But in spelling bee, it's uncanny. All Indians, toppers are all Indians, Indian origin. Children of Indian parents, okay? And you have to ask, why? What is special about this? The Chinese are there, very close, and they are no less, and they are in competition, they are there in academics. And of course, American Caucasians are all there, they are not ordinary either. and they are born and brought up in this culture, and English is their native tongue. And living these Indian children in America living with Indian parents, they constantly have to deal with Indian parents. Appa, this is not the way to pronounce this. You don't know any English at all. Okay, you are embarrassing me. Okay, so this is how it works. But how these kids are doing well. So I don't know. Some research may have to be done on that. Maybe it's already done. But this Indians have an uncanny ability. Maybe it's memorization. Maybe it's what. But at least spelling we can manage, omniscient. But then, let me do this. Let me close this door. So it's good. Sunshine was coming, and somehow there is a glare I thought I saw. That's why I closed the door. So spelling we can manage, but what about pronunciation? What about pronunciation? How many of us can pronounce that word OMNISCIENTRCE? The word science itself, we have a problem. SCIENCE. Okay. And I went to Google. And Google, it gave me three options. Three options. You can choose the Indian English pronunciation. You can choose American English pronunciation. And you can choose British English. Whatever. We are really living in an advanced world, I tell you. I'm so impressed by Google. And you can choose. So I chose for this OMIN. So three different pronunciations. Indian thing, omni science. Indian people are very clear about pronunciation. We pronounce words exactly as they are written, because in Indian languages, every letter is pronounced exactly the same way, regardless of where it is, which word it is. So omniscience, science and omniscience, or science, omniscience. Okay. Then British, I wanted to check. Omniscience. They say science a little differently. So omniscience, like that they say. Then American, omniscience, I think. And then there is all this omni, and all that. There are some slight fluctuations in the pronunciation. Therefore, there is no way we can handle this, and this is too much for many people. And so we can't handle this word omniscience, and we are supposed to understand the omniscient God. Krishna says you have to understand me. So Puja Swamiji makes fun of this. And this word, omniscient word, is Puja Swamiji's example. And so it's a parampara. It has become a parampara now. So all of us talk about that. And so literally trying to understand Ishwara is out of question. Out of question. Because he's Sarvajna. He's all knowing. I'm small knowing. Swamiji uses the word small knowing. And it's not possible. And therefore, we have to come back to the original equation, Tattvamasi. Hey, I recognize that my nature is same as the nature of Ishwara. The wave recognizes that I am water, and this whole ocean is also water. And so there is no difference between the two waters. Both waters are identical. And so that identity, and I am that water, I am not the wave. Wave is I, but I am not the wave. Such an important cognitive shift it is. It's a cognitive shift. And it makes difference, big difference it makes. And so that I is imperishable, that I cannot die. No, but I am afraid of this body. I don't want this body to perish. Hey, I don't want this body to perish is a foolish statement. Knowing so much and so many advances are happening, and we can look at all the changes in the cells in the body. They say new cells are born and cells are dying and everything they say. And now if we come and say this body should not perish, that's a foolish statement. Therefore, we got to be objective, and this body is not me anyway. Body is me, but I am not the body. Okay, we saw all this. Therefore, that Paramatma not being separate from myself, that identity is critical here. And so here, look at what he says. He says, Bahavaha madbhavam agataha. In the second line, Bahavaha, first word, and then last two words, madbhavam agataha. Bahavaha, many. Bahavaha janaha, bahavaha purushaha, bahavaha bhaktaha. Many people. Madbhavam agataha. They have reached my nature. They have come back to my nature. That's a literal translation of that. They have come back. So here, here we ask the question: why everybody does not reach Bhagavan? Why only a few people? Bahavaha means many, right? And Shankaracharya says aneke. Not that it's a difficult word to translate, but he helps us anyway. So when he's in a good mood, he will just write a lot more. Few more words he will write. And Shankaracharya. So aneke, he says. Aneke, okay. Bahut or anek. In Hindi we have both. So that makes anek means more than one, not one. Not one means more than one in Hindi. But here in Bahavaha means in Sanskrit, there is Dvivachanam and Bahuvachanam. So here we have to say three or more. Three or more. That's a literal translation of Bahavaha. Okay. And so, but Swamiji says, whether it is three or more, whether it is 10,000 or a million, it is still a finite number. Like that Swamiji says. And why is that? That Krishna is telling here, Vita-raga-bhaya-krodha. This raga, bhaya and krodha. He comes back to the theme of raga-dvesha. Earlier we said Bhagavad Gita is about raga-dvesha psychology. So he comes back. He comes back to raga and so forth. So this raga-dvesha is there in every human being. In particular, the binding raga-dveshas. Raga-dveshas which are essential for me to satisfy. Otherwise, my life is going to be rough, empty. I will be shattered. So any raga dvesha, which falls in that category of binding desire, we already talked about it before, and that is there. And the minute I have binding desires, I'm going to have bhaya. Bhaya is fear. Fear. Why fear? Why fear? Why do human beings have fear? So fear of failure. Things don't happen. And you got to keep on running around to get things done. And even after all the bribes are paid in India, still things don't happen. So this anxiety and fear is there. Constantly it is there. And even otherwise, fear is always there. And even the best speaker has stage fear. Because the person is an expert in the subject. And you go tell them, you talk about it in the public. No, I can't talk. So stage fear. Why stage fear is there? Because I don't know, perhaps I may forget. I know a lot. I'm an expert. But when I stand in front of an audience, suddenly it feels like I forget everything. I don't know because I'm afraid of facing an audience. Or I know things, but then I don't know what the audience will think of me. What will they assume of me? Like that idea may come. So whatever be the reason, stage fear is there. And even the smartest student in the class, that person, that come exam time, the person is nervous. Nervousness is there. The hands are sweating. And until the question paper is given, and the question paper, it looks both sides, everything. Oh, okay. I think I can handle this. Until then, there is a lot of anxiety. And so this anxiety and fear is constantly there. Doesn't seem to leave us. And so raga, he doesn't say dvesha, raga, and then he says bhaya, fear, and krodha. And Krodha we've seen before. Okay. We've seen at least 2 times. Where did we see it before? Second chapter. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat San. So I was saying that he said raga, then he says bhaya. Raga includes dvesha also, and bhaya, and then he comes to krodha. So Krishna seems to like this. He latches on to these things, these 2 or 3 things. So second chapter we saw these things. Krodha we saw. So dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha. By my dwelling over objects and people, the kama develops, the desire, a more intense desire, a stronger desire develops. Then kamat krodho bhijayate. From desire comes anger. We discussed this extensively that time, and we said, why should anger? I mean, why should that karma become anger? That's because a desire to achieve something, a desire to possess something. If the desire is obstructed by somebody or something, then that obstruction becomes a target of my anger. We saw that earlier. So anger immediately, that desire becomes anger. And he says it once again in the 3rd chapter, when in response to Arjuna's question. Arjuna asked the question in Shloka number 37 or something like that. And he asked the question, Kama, so no, 36, I think he said. He's asking, Athakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha. Hey Krishna, knowing all this, why does a person commit harm, commit hurt, papam charati? Why does he commit an act of that is not righteous, that hurts himself herself? And Krishna immediately says, Kama yesha krodha yeshaha. Again, go back to Kama only. Kama yesha krodha yesha. That binding desire is the cause. And by the way, that binding desire becomes anger. Just a matter of a second, it can be turned into anger. Krodha yeshaha. So we have to recall all that here. Vita-raga-bhaya-krodha. And so he says, Vita, one who is free from raga, bhaya, and krodha. Vita. The meaning of Vita means one from whom if the person is free from these 3. Free from the binding desires, and the binding desires caused fear, and fear caused or kama caused krodha, anger. And how can one become free from fear? That would be very nice. And why not? That sounds like a good idea. Is there some Ayurvedic, powder churnam or something which will help us with that? That would be nice, I think. I would also be interested in that. But Krishna doesn't bring Ayurveda here. He's constantly going back to Karmayoga. Later on, he's going to say in 9th chapter, Yat karoshi yad ashnasi. Yat karoshi yad ashnasi yad juhoshi. Like that he said, dadasi yat. So, yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. He's going to say, whatever you do, yat karoshi, whatever you do, and yad ashnasi, whatever you eat, you consume, and then yat juhosi, whatever rituals you do, whatever offerings you give to people, to things, to in your yaga, whatever you do, yat dadasi, whatever you give to people, and do it as madarpanam. Do it as an attitude of I'm giving to Ishwara, because the whole world is Ishwara anyway. And so where is the question of any separation? And so he's going to say that later also, and earlier also he said karmanyavadikaraste, etc. All that was said. So that attitude of karma yoga has to be brought in, and by that person becomes a Vita-raga-bhaya-krodha. So that word That long word, Vita-raga-bhaya-krodha. That word refers to a person. It doesn't refer to anger. It doesn't refer to fear. It doesn't refer to raga. It refers to a person who is free from kama, bhaya, and krodha. Okay, you may want to make a note of that. So all these words. So let's look at this. There are bahavaha, many. That's the main word, and every other word is an adjective to that. Many. What kind of many? What kind of people are there? There are many people, and they are agataha. They have come to me. And who are these people? They are Vita-raga-bhaya-krodha, people who are free from this kama and anger, etc. And then Manmayaha, Mamupashritaha, and Putaha. All these are words describing people of certain characteristics. And they all madbhavam agataha. They all come back to me. They've come back to me, like that Krishna has said. So we need to understand each word. They're all loaded words here. And so we have to slowly understand these words. Okay. So Vita-raga-bhaya-krodha are people who are free from raga, dvesha, kama, and krodha and bhaya. Okay. Now, then Manmaya. So it says here Manmaya, but the visarga is dropped due to the sandhi. Therefore, it is Manmaya. Again, referring to people. People. What kind of people? Who are they? This word Maya, not to confuse with Maya. This is nothing to do with Maya. Maya. Maya is a suffix in Sanskrit. It's a suffix which we add to certain nouns to create a meaning. So what meaning does Maya give? So those of you who studied Tattva Bodha, we've heard of Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha. So that Maya, that same Maya is a suffix. Okay. But then that suffix Maya has two meanings. Two meanings. One Maya is the Maya in the Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha. Annamaya Kosha. This body, this physical body, the physical body, not the subtle aspects. The physical body is called Annamaya Kosha. Means what? Modification of food. The food which becomes modified is called the body. The body is referred to as a modified form of food. Therefore, the body is called Annamaya. Mayat Vikare. So Vikara means transformation. And so the food has transformed itself into this body. Okay. Therefore, Annamaya. Pranamaya, Manomaya, like that. There is all transformations. Okay. Okay. So one meaning is transformation. Vikare. Here, that is not the meaning. Here, the meaning is prachurye, abundance, in the sense of abundance, in the sense of concentration, in the sense of saturation. Okay. I hope I'm making myself clear. So in the sense of saturation, like Jalamayam, when there are floods, 2 days, 3 days, constant rains, now it's all floods everywhere. And so Jalamayam, not modification of water. It's pure water everywhere. As far as the eye can see, it's all water. Okay. We use the word Jalamayam, correct? Jalamayam. So like that. And so that Maya is being used here. Manmaya. Manmaya means what? Full of me. Full of me. Full of me. I heard this phrase in America. He is full of himself, they say. And I used to wonder, what is the meaning of that? Full of himself means what? Then I had to infer, oh, it means probably they're talking about his attitude, and full of himself means the person is probably constantly talking about his glories, and I did this, I did that, and I went this, and I accomplished this. Not a single word, how are you? How are you word is not spoken at all, okay? And this is a response to the how are you question. And so they say he's full of himself. Nobody goes near that person, because we don't want to hear another Ramayana every day like this. And so here, Manmaya, Bhagavan says, the one who is saturated with me, Like that, he's using that word. Can you believe that? Which means what? You have to understand that. And so, not difficult. So, Karmayoga we already talked about. So, everything is Ishwara. Ishwara is manifest as this world. The world is not separate from Bhagavan. Very important in our tradition. That is why we can worship Bhagavan in any form. Any form. And this idea of one God and many gods, people get confused because of that. And there are no many gods. There is just Ishwara that is worshipped in any number of forms. And so many devatas are there. And so that attitude, bringing that attitude to reality, and that person who's as though become one with me, like the person who loves to play a musical instrument like violin or veena or piano, and some of them just latch on to it. They just love it so much, and from the time they get up to the time they sleep, this is all they think about. They love it just from pure love. It just comes out. And so and the person who plays chess, who loves to play chess and is constantly this, you can't separate chess from that person. That person and chess have become one. That person and violin have become one. That person and the music have become one. You can't separate. That person and the dance have become one. Like that it is. And so I was thinking of these musical instruments, and I was watching, there is this channel called Indian Raga. How many of you know of Indian Raga? Yeah, so many of you watch that channel. I even subscribed to the channel. I don't know what happens if you subscribe. You're supposed to get emails or something. I never got any emails. So anyway, so they are doing wonders. Young people and these young musicians in America and India and all, they're very accomplished, very talented, and then they create a collage, and then it's fantastic. And it's almost like you feel like yesterday I'm listening to them for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and back to back YouTube. I was on YouTube, and young girl, and her name is Charulata. I think she's in Chennai, and she's playing veena. Veena is it's a big instrument. It goes from here to here, okay, and it's on this side it's pretty big, and this side it's little shorter. This girl is not even the height of the veena. Okay, have you seen Charulata? Some of you and some may have seen. So look up Indian Rag, and she's hardly the height of the veena, and she's playing veena, and with so much ease and with you can see her face, and she's so happy, and she has to jump this side to go to this side of the. She's this short. She has to stretch her body to reach out to the other end of the veena. Okay, then she has to come back immediately to this side, and Paluke Bangara Mayana she does, and so beautiful. So you can't separate the person from the music. You can't separate the person. And so that's the idea here. Manmaya. Once a person sees that reality, and then there is no question of separating. They become one with me, he says. One with me. While living, not after death. After death, the merging is different. It's a different idea. That person, right now, while living, Manmayaha. Manmayaha bhavanti. And so that can only happen. That can only happen by knowledge. Otherwise, there's no question of complete oneness. And by recognizing that there was really no separation to begin with, that is the only thing. Only then you can become one with something. Otherwise, what happens? Otherwise, we have to find a glue, to become one. To join two things, we need glue. And then that glue also is temporary only. And wherever there is a glue, you have to be careful. And then you have to wonder, after some time, it's going to dry out. And then it falls off. So this problem is always going to be there. So, therefore, by Karmayoga, Antakarana Shuddhi, and then Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, by listening to the Shastram and thinking about it, Mananam, and then removing all this conditionings, Nididhyasanam. because I've been conditioned to think that I am an individual, I am small, and I'm a victim of so many things, and I am a mortal, and so all that the deconditioning has to take place. So Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. And so then that person is called a Mamupashrita. He uses another word here. Manmayaha Mamupashrita. Mamupashrita. And so here, sometimes I translate this as one who takes refuge in me. Takes refuge in me. And which means in me, how can you take refuge in somebody? When the somebody is separate, then you can surrender to the person. I surrender to you. You are my savior, I can say. And as person separate. And sure, when we grow up, that's how it is. That surrender, Sharanagati Bhava is so important. And I surrender to Ishwara because every law is Ishwara. Therefore, I surrender to that law. And I see that only that attitude of Sharanagati gives me that freedom. Otherwise, I'm going to be constantly anxious and fear. This raga, bhaya, and krodha is always going to be there. So that Sharanagati is important. But going further beyond Sharanagati, if there is a second person, Sharanagati is possible. Suppose Ishwara says, what can I do? I am you. Who will you surrender to? I am not separate from you. Suppose Bhagavan says that. Then what will the devotee do? Well, one thing is left. What did you say just now? You said you're not separate from me. What do you mean by you're not separate from me? Teach me that. That is what Arjuna asked. Therefore, finally it comes to knowledge of oneness. Tattvamasi, he has to come. And so, Mamupashrita, one who has gone through the disciplines of Karmayoga and who surrenders to Karmayoga and Jnana Yoga, that person is called Mamupashrita, plural Mamupashrita. Remember, all these words are in plural because referring to many, Bahavaha, many people. So, Manmayaha, Mamupashritaha, then what? Then Putaha. Puta. We saw this word pu before. Pu, purify. Pu, to purify. Where did we see it? Pavakaha. Did we say it somewhere? Somewhere we saw it. I'm not able to recall now whether it was in a shloka or not. Pavakaha. So purify. We talked about why fire is called a purifier. Okay. So that pu, that dhatu is pu and purify. And so he's using the same word, Sanskrit students, tap pratyaya. So putaha, putaha. So one who is purified. Now, suppose we say purify. Immediately, what can we think of? We think of water purification, pure water. We think of purification of iron ore. We think of all the common processes we use at home and outside that are used to purify. This is the idea. And so I have to purify myself. This idea is there. And Vaidya says Vishnu Sahasranamam has the word Putatma. Putatma, that's good. So this chat is somewhat good, but except I don't see this chat so often. So so Putatma. So purify. What kind of purification is this? So if my reality is going to be impurity, if I consider myself to be impure, whatever that impurity is, then I have to purify myself. Like I purify so many things in this life. Okay, I can purify. So we do say antakarana shuddhi. Correct? Shuddhi means what? Some kind of purification, some kind of cleanliness we talk about. And just like the house gets dirty, and I mean in India the windows are all open, and so every day from morning you clean, by night already there is a lot of dust, and so we have to constantly keep dusting the house, and so this process is constant. And so antakarana shuddhi. So there also purification is there of the mind. Okay. Well, so we know now what is the purification there. There is raga dvesha, same thing. Raga-bhaya-krodha. That is what is the impurity of my mind. And I am bound by my own likes. Okay. And therefore, which causes this life of samsara. And there is always bhaya and krodha. And so that is the purity that Krishna will refer to. The Shastram, anywhere in the Shastram, you read Kathopanishad or Kenopanishad, it will refer only to that. That is a purity, if at all talks about. But then it says, no, but that's not your nature. Your nature is not impurity at all. You really have no impurity. Atma has no impurity at all. And we can talk about the mind being like this and so forth. And honesty can be a problem. Being honest can be a problem, etc. We can talk about that. But Atma. So other day Anjali quoted the example of this person who is a serial killer. And what to do? Very sad to see a serial killer, and sad for the people who are victims, and sad for that person also. And so, yeah, you can't. Nobody can change the person. That is how. That is the conclusion people draw. And so there is all those problems. So we can say there is a problem of the mind, and that problem of the mind has to be worked. We have to work on that. For our own selves, we work on our own mind. Therefore, this emotional maturity is a very big thing. In America also, it's a big thing. In corporations, they've come up with this emotional intelligence and so forth. And but for us, it's very important, because not for its own sake, but also because it's a prerequisite for jnana. And only this shastram talks about emotional maturity being a prerequisite for jnana. And so, putaha, they're all purified. And how are they purified? That also Krishna talks about here. And if you look at the shloka, Jnanatapasa. So here you should not say Jnanatapasaha, just like we put visarga and everything, Manmayaha, Vita-raga-bhaya-krodha. Here it's not Jnanatapasaha. Jnanatapasa is singular. By the tapas of knowledge. That is a literal translation. By the tapas of knowledge. Okay. That's how they become purified. Putaha. So, how is that? What is the meaning of this? Even though we can make out what that means. Tapas, the word tapas is a discipline. And in our case, we call it a spiritual or a religious discipline. For us, it's a discipline. And so, it probably is there in all cultures. They have religious disciplines. Every religion has religious disciplines. And here also we do. And so doing our daily rituals properly, that itself is a tapas. And we have other tapas, other forms of disciplines. Tapas means discipline. And even we have japa. Japa tapas is there. Okay. Japa. So some people do japa. Japa, every day I want to chant Gayatri mantra 108 times or 1008 times, whatever time is available for me, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. 1008, if you say, it will go to an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours even, if you chant slowly. So that is called tapas. I want to do that. So like that, there is a mantra tapas, japa tapas, and then the tapas of visiting religious sacred places is a tapas. And then sitting at home, there is vak tapas, tapas of speaking. Vak tapas is very, very important, because what is vak tapas? When we control our speech, the mastery over speech is called vak tapas. Mastery over what I say. I can recognize that I seem to say things very often. I speak a lot, or I say things I should not say often, or, like that. If that recognition is there, then we have a trick. We say, okay, every day for half an hour or for 1 hour, don't speak at all. Just don't speak. Don't pick up the phone. Somebody knocks, you just say, In ashrams, we do that. We put a band on our neck, a neck band, and then we say maunam. Maunam. Maunam means silence. So as long as this thing is there on the neck, everybody understands. Okay, this person is. Am I audible? Yeah, audible. Okay. So mauna. So because we have to tell everybody else also, so that it's the communication is clear. I'll come back to you. Not now, for 1 more hour. So maunam from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. You can write that, and then that's it. That's a great discipline, because the urge to speak is so much. Urge to speak is there, and of course, we people who study Vedanta, we have a big urge to speak. Okay, that is there, but I'm not talking about that. When there is no need to speak, are you speaking? Okay, and so that is called Vaktapas. That's called what beautiful, and I learned that in the ashram, and that technique many people we used to follow, and voluntarily somebody will put on the Vaktapas, and some people will keep that for a week, even 2 weeks. They will have 3 weeks. I've seen my classmates do that. And so be practical, and because you have to answer calls, your son or daughter may call you, etc., and your parents are there. All this is there. You got to keep everything in mind. So you can't just walk away from your duties while doing this Vaktapas. And last Saturday I called a friend, and she's helping us with the children in Mysore, and I wanted somebody to keep an eye on children and their emotional needs and things like that, and not just the academic part of it. Academic part, there are teachers, many of our friends are teaching, but I always wanted somebody, and wife of a friend of mine. We studied in college together, and when I spoke to her, she said, I would like to do it, etc. And she agreed, and past 2-3 months, she's been engaging with her children, and the children love her so much. And I called her last Saturday for something else. And then Monday, she returns my call. And then she says, Jaykumarji, I'm very sorry. My weekends are gadget-free. Gadget-free weekends. I was so happy to hear that. I said, wow, this is very impressive. I love it. I'm so happy. But then she has a son. And then what about that? How do you deal with that? And no, the husband is there to take care of his son. So there's a problem. We will address. So therefore, gadget free. No computer, no cell phone. I think that's it. She's got it. She got the idea. I'm so happy. And so this is all tapas. All this is called tapas. And so Bhagavan Krishna could have said tapasa puta. He didn't say tapasa puta. He said Jnanatapasa puta. Why not? Why not tapasa puta? Because antakarna shuddhi also has its limits. Nobody is free of ragadveshas. Nobody is 100% free of fear, anxiety, etc. All this is not possible. And so it's only a relative shuddhi. Relative shuddhi. Relatively better off. I am in control of myself. Relatively. Means to a large extent. That's all we can say. And so the only time this can be final, only time the finality can be achieved is by knowledge. And so he says, Jnanatapasa, very important word there, the fire of knowledge. And later on also, Krishna is going to say, say in this chapter itself, he's going to say, Nahi jnanena pavitram iha vidyate. Pavitram, there also he uses the word pavitram, purity and sanctity. He's going to say that. Nahi jnanena. What is the most sacred thing? Knowledge. Nahi jnanena. Like that, he says that. And he's also going to say another shloka after that. So he's going to give the example of the firewood. Yathaidamsi samidhognihi basmasat kurute tata. Just like fire consumes the wood, the block of wood, big block of wood, consumes it so much that not even a dash of wood is left. Everything is completed, converted to ashes. So also, Jnana Agni Sarva Karmani. No, Jaykumarji, Lord of Papa, I've done so much. I can't redeem myself. I'm finished. I'm gone. No, Jnana Agni Sarva Karmani. Bhasmasat Kurute Tatha. That knowledge will convert all your karma into ashes. Nothing will be left. Not a dash will be left. Like that, he's going to say later. And so, Jnanatapasa, so important here for us. So that's Swadhyaya. So there is a group called Swadhyaya group. And very, very nice. I like that name. Swadhyaya means study. You have to study the Shastram. And Shastram has to be with us every day as far as possible. And so, Jnanatapasa, Puta Madbhavam Agataha. Those people who are purified by that knowledge of oneness between Ishwara and jiva are purified, and they come to my nature. They become me. They become me not by traveling a long distance, by buying a ticket, etc. I gave them a ticket. Finally, I was so impressed and pleased by these devotees. I gave them a ticket. No, not by that kind of travel, just by knowledge. By knowing that the jiva is not separate from Ishwara, the Puta Madbhavam Agataha. Yeah, so Vaidya is reminding us of the shloka from this Sadhana Panchakam. Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam. Shankaracharya starts that. I was thinking of teaching that. So that Panchakam. Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam. May you study the Vedas every day. Like that he starts. That is how he starts the Sadhana Panchakam. And so therefore, Puta Madbhavam Agataha. Okay. So now we will transition to the next shloka. Arjuna may have a question, and we will see what that question, potential question Arjuna can have. We'll see that in the next class. Let's translate this shloka. Free from craving, fear, and anger, comma. Vita-raga-bhaya-krodha. Free from craving, fear, from anger, comma. Totally resolved in me, Manmaya. Totally resolved in me means consumed by me. Consumed by me. That word consume is a very nice word. I like that word. The person who is devoted to any particular discipline, any particular hobby, etc., they can be consumed by that hobby. They say, we say he's consumed by it. So it's not an obsession per se. Obsession, sometimes we use the word. Obsession has a negative connotation, so I don't like to use that word. Just pure love. And so that such a life will only help the person. It cannot hurt the person. Okay. So here, totally resolved in me, Manmaya, comma. Taking refuge in me, Mamupashrita. Taking refuge in me, literal translation. Okay. Comma. Purified by the discipline of knowledge, Jnanatapasaha Puta. Purified by the discipline of knowledge. Many have come back to my nature. Many have come back to my nature. Bahavaha madbhavam agataha. Free from craving, fear, and anger, totally resolved in me, taking refuge in me, purified by the discipline of knowledge, comma, many have come back to my nature. So you can see, a translation alone is not enough to understand the shlokas. Because if I simply read this translation, you have to assume a lot of things. Many have come back to my nature means you got to, what will you think? What will you think? And totally resolved in me, taking refuge in me means what? How are we going to understand? These translations also are loaded. So we never start with translations. And Gita and all our Shastram cannot be studied through translations. It has to be studied only by Shravana. That's the best way to study these things. Translation we have to do, and translation may not be proper because in English there may not be certain words. And how do you translate those words? So we have problems. This shloka also, this translation there is the best. And I'm just reading what Swamiji has said. So it's the best he could do. Okay. So with that, I think we will stop with that and we will continue with number 11, which is an answer to a potential question or doubt of Arjuna. We will see that in the next class. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. I know some of you may leave now, and before you leave, I wanted to say something.